Yoo-hoo. Hi, yes, hi. I'm gonna set you down now. I am here to do a January wrap-up because I guess I am a reader now. It's real. I absolutely smashed my reading goal for last year. I started off strong with 7 books this month, and I would like to make these wrap-up videos because I'm really bad at remembering what I read once I get a book or two past it. And this is not fun when it comes to sequels or when I have to wait a year for a release. And also just when I have friends read things and I want to talk to them about it and I can't remember who the 7th husband of Evelyn Hugo was or whatever, right? I won't spoil anything because that's not what I'm here to do for any of these books. The first book that I read to start off 2024 was Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree, which is the book that follows Legends and Lattes, except it's a prequel. It took me a second to grasp that one because of the short story that follows Legends and Lattes being a different prequel. It's a lot, but once you read the book and you read the acknowledgement, I guess he really had like a sophomore slump kind of moment, and this is what came out of it, which makes me really hopeful for anything else to come in the future. I also think it opens up a world for so many different possibilities and dips into little sections of Viv's life just as this book does. I did feel like Viv was less present in this one. I mean, the whole book is about her. She's there, like she's physically there, but I feel like she was a little bit further away here. But the secondary characters were so built out in this one, and I think that's an area that really expanded from first book to second book. And I don't know about anybody else, but I would love more Satchel. He was so funny and so cute, and I'm very curious like how people picture these characters and these different kinds of monsters. I think it's a really interesting tool for diversity instead of using humans. Something crazy. I didn't realize until I read the author blurb in this book that Travis Baldree worked on a PC, like computer game that I used to play when I was a kid called Fate. And I think about that game for some reason multiple times a year, and I just kind of like wonder if anybody else in the world ever played that. Like, was that just a unique to me experience? I played it a ton as a kid, and I'm just like, why are you here writing this now? It makes perfect sense that I love it if it's also from your brain. So this one I ended up giving a 4.75 out of 5 just because I liked the concept of Legends and Lattes a little bit more. Like, it didn't quite feel as good to me because of just the storyline, but it's still a really great book, and I'm so excited for whatever else comes next. The second book that I read in January 2024 was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I guess I was just in the mood of reading books about books, and I did not expect the pacing of this one to be so darn fast, but it was, and it worked really well. I knew that this was about a white girl who steals the Asian American story of an Asian American author who apparently was basically her best friend after her death, and publishes it as her own because she's kind of hungry for success in the world of being an author because she just sucks at it. Maybe because she doesn't have any unique experiences of her own and she's just a bitter human. It was really fun to read a book by such a sour, like, horrible main character because we're so used to rooting for the main characters. The secondhand embarrassment that you are supposed to feel while you read this book, and let me tell you, you feel it, is through the roof. It is so wild. It got wrapped up super fast, like a Pretty Little Liars episode, and I wasn't entirely here for that. Like, I think I read this essentially in one day. The third book that I read in January 2024 was for a book club, and I don't know what kind of unhinged move it is to pick a Holocaust novel as a book club pick when you could pick anything in the world, but that's what my girlfriend did, and so I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz, and it was actually a very good read. This is a real story about a man named Lowe who was a tattooist in Auschwitz. Wow, imagine that. And he was in charge of putting everybody's numbers on them as they entered the camp. But there's a lot of content in the back of this copy in specific about Heather Morris interviewing and getting the full story from Lael, the main character of this book, about his time in the camp and everything he had to do and everything he had to go through. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and explain the Holocaust to anybody, but that is the plot of this book, and it's a love story, and it's beautiful and full of coincidences that make me wonder, like, where Heather Morris took creative liberty and where she didn't. Knowing that it was real, I couldn't tell if I liked Heather's writing or if I liked Lil's story. And it could be both. The answer could be both. The fourth book that I read for January 2024 was Breathing Fire, Female Inmate Firefighters on the Front Lines of California Wildfires by Jamie Lowe. This was like an impulse buy on a trip to Powell's when we were in Portland a few months ago, because we are obsessed with this show called Fire Country, which is about inmate firefighters in California, you guessed it. It does have like a kind of an organizational problem, I think, but I am in a place where I'm affected by wildfires every season, and so a lot of this kind of like hits home and sounds very, very real, where I think to some people it might just sound like a story. And the author did a very, very good job of interviewing and honestly befriending several different women who fought fires in some of the worst fire seasons that we've known. If you, for some reason, are watching this and you also watch the show Fire Country, this is such great background knowledge to have. I think it's really interesting when you can learn the facts of things that inspire people's creative freedom that they're taking. This book will definitely make you think about barriers and obstacles and how quickly and easily people either forget or ignore that we all start off in different places, and just because you start off somewhere doesn't always mean that that's where you're moving on from, and that is just something that I think is probably really important to keep top of mind as we all just navigate the world. So if you want a like check yourself before you wreck yourself, this is kind of it. The fifth book that I read in January 2024 was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. It definitely took me a second to get the hang of who was who and all the characters and how they kind of popped in and out and who was a regular and who was new. The format being 4 short stories in this tiny, tiny book, like, you will fly through it. I don't know why I'm trying to sit here and explain it to anybody, because I think everybody understands, like, this, I am so late to the game here, but it is about a cafe that allows you to time travel, but only 2 moments with other people who have visited this same cafe with you. I'm very excited to like continue on, because I've heard from several booktubers and whatnot that as you go onward through the second and third book, at least, the series just gets better and the stories get more interesting and more diverse from one another. I really, really liked the second story and the fourth story in this one. Okay, I hate myself a little bit for this one too, but this has been on my TBR for, I believe, 9 years, thanks to 2 things. 1, Pullin' Bananas books, and 2, my high school Sarah K and Phil K slam poetry phase. So my 6th book of January 2024 was slammed by Colleen Hoover. I have never read this author before. I know she is so popular and so talked about, and that this is her first book. I did not know that there were more books to this. I thought this was completely standalone, so I did finish it and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to go read more Coho. And I couldn't stop thinking about how much I enjoyed it while I was enjoying it, but how much more and also differently I would have devoured this if I was in high school, like when I had added it to my TBR initially. The back of the book does not disclose why the romantic relationship may be on the rocks in this book, but I think it's important to note that it is an age gap situation. It's only a few years, but they do seem like really big years. And so that took me some time to get used to. I think you can get past it, but it was, the gap was just sitting in my mind the whole time I read this book, but that did not stop me from giving it 5 stars. Finally, I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I had honestly low expectations for this book because everybody that I've talked to enjoyed Red, White, and Royal Blue more. But as a woman-loving woman, I figured and I had hoped that I would enjoy this one more. Also because these seem like normal people, not royalty. I knew going into this that Jane was stuck on the train, and it literally tells you so on the back of the book. But I had mentioned it to one of my friends before I picked the book up that I knew that, and they acted like I had ruined the whole book for myself, but like it's literally on the back of the book. And then when I talked to that same friend, hey Amy, about my thoughts when I finished this book, she was like, yeah, I just couldn't get that into it because I wasn't expecting the kind of sci-fi element of like minor time travel. And I'm like, well, maybe if we had read the back of the book, bud. But I feel like in the end that ended up setting me up for such success to enjoy it as much as I did. I think it's really cool to finally be entering a world of like sapphic novels, because if I had had these at a slightly younger age, just from like a normalization standpoint, I think so many moments of my life could have been a lot easier. There are a few drag show scenes, and it made me stop and think because I don't think I've ever read a drag show scene. And these were so cleverly written that you kind of felt like you were there and you knew how funny and how like jaw-dropping the scenes were for the people who were at the parties. That was good, and I would like more of it. After I finished this and then I read Casey McQuiston's acknowledgement in the back of the book, well, let me read it. To the queer reader, thank you for existing. So much of the story is about building a community. I'm so happy to be in community with you. Be defiant, love yourself hard. Take the energy in these pages and get involved in your direct physical community. Take care of one another. Know that you are wanted and loved and awaited by millions of us. I was like, this one gets it. She gets it. There's a line, August could learn how to live without breathing just to stay like this forever. When I read that line, with no other context, no, you don't get any more context. When I read that line, I was like, this book is exactly what it should be. I couldn't put it down, and I thought it was going to be my scariest book of the month, and it wasn't. I think I'm going to do a reread of Legend. So I'm going to start this with a couple days left in January. I'm intrigued because this was one of my favorite series when I was in my dystopian phase, and I would love to revisit it as an adult and see what I think. Anyways, that is my January 2024 wrap up, and here's what I'm starting February with, and I guess just thank you for watching. I don't know why you're here.